Welcome to another episode of Field Notes, insights and observations for the travel marketer. My name is Eric Hultgren. On today's episode, we talk to CEO of the AMA, the American Marketing Association, Bennie F Johnson, and we go all over the place. It's an absolute blast, and I hope you enjoy this episode. And as I said, my guest, and I'm super excited for this, CEO of the AMA, Bennie F Johnson. My friend, how are you today?
Oh my goodness, I am doing well. It's an incredible time. We're breaking into spring.
We are. I wanna start with a little bit of a curveball because I know one of your favorite things to talk about is culture and how the culture is shifting. And since
Yes.
we are all living through a John Cena heel turn in 2025, I'm wondering, Bennie, if you're not the CEO of the AMA and you're a professional wrestler, what is your walkout song?
Oh my goodness, what is my walkout song? Are you giving me Attitude Era
You can pick
WWE?
whatever era you want. You can
This
go
is
1980s, Attitude Era, whatever you want to do.
you know that depends, right? So you need to have a walkout song that brings everybody together, that gets people excited, that either has them, you know, love to hate you or hate to love you. You
Yep.
need that type of energy. I think in that space, you need to go with a DJ Khaled essential, right? You need DJ Khaled to kind of open it up,
You
right?
need DJ Khaled. Yes.
You need that. And then you need T-Pain to blast the all I do is win, right? Because you need to have people understand, as I said before, that whether they love or hate you, they
Got
have
it.
to embrace you,
I
right?
love it.
I,
I
I
love it.
think that's the walkout song that works for you.
Perfect. Perfect. We're going to go with that. All right. We are obviously here to talk about marketing, but I'm a firm believer that literally everything is marketing, so you can start anywhere. And Bennie, I've been doing work with the AMA here in the Michigan chapter for a long, long time. So I am well versed with what you do and why it's important. But as we are talking to travel marketers, perhaps that might not be as
Right.
readily available to them. So I'd love to start high level very quickly, and then we can kind of get into the meats of this. So for somebody who doesn't know why the AMA is so important, not only as a national company, but
Right.
at the local level, what's the deal with the AMA?
You know, AMA is really at the heart of marketing, and it's at the heart of a profession. And a profession is about community, right? You can't be in a profession by yourself. You can't grow, expand, or have impact by yourself. You need to roll with others. And that's what professional associations can do. But the AMA has done for almost 100 years. It's scary when you think about it in that space. And it
Sure.
shows up in different ways, right? What we needed in 94 is different than 2020 is different than today. But the fact that we need that reinforced support and community is important. So the AMA is a space for you to find network and colleagues, people who are doing what you're doing. It's a space in which you can find mentorship and people who are doing what you need to do ahead that you can look to. It's a space in which you can actually give back to helping those who are coming behind, which are all kind of that generative power that you get in the profession. You know, it's where people find their next business partners. It's where you find your next business idea. It's where we grow as both marketers and the profession. I mean, that's high level what AMA is able to do. And we do it in really specific local ways in the community and the space there, really broader ways in the industry that you're facing. If you want to connect with other travel marketers, AMA is a place for you. If you want to look and say, what can I learn from entertainment marketing that reinforces what I'm doing in travel marketing, AMA is the space for us to be. You know, if you want to hone on what it means to be a marketer, the classics, the four P's, the core, AMA is a space. But if you want to see what's coming next, how are creators taking content? How are we driving meaning and impact? AMA is also that space for you.
Now, before we jump into some other questions, I also want to give you flowers because you made this announcement a week ago, and I think of all the work that the AMA does, it's all important, but this one is near and dear to my heart because I think the sooner you start students down
Right.
that path, the better shot they have is understanding the chaos that is a professional marketer. You guys
Yes.
just started the high school certification. Can you talk about that real quick and we'll
Oh
get
my
into this other
goodness.
stuff?
I can. And a big shout out to our partner with this, Stu Kent. as an organization, we had a chance to connect. I connected with their new CEO, and immediately we started talking about how do you shape and amplify the future? And we know that students are interested in marketing, but may not know the things we just talked about. What are the nuts and bolts? How do I actually build the right practices? How do I build the right structure for a career in space? But also, how do I distinguish myself in the process? Helping me get better access to marketing programs in college, helping me go off on my own. We do our collegiate conference every year, and it's interesting. A couple of years ago, we did a session with a creator economy, and it was
Sure.
powerful to see how many students, freshmen, sophomore, juniors in college, were already, while they're learning their formal marketing education, were running their own creator businesses, right?
Yep.
And that's happening earlier and often. What can we do, though, as the leading professional employees to make sure that students are learning the right valuable things just in time, right? As they're developing. How can we validate that knowledge so then they can use that to open up other doors, whether it's studying in a formal program, whether it's going off and starting their own businesses, whether it's going and working for other firms, they have a space in which it reinforces the learning and validates. So what do we want to do? We want to learn and we want to empower. And those are two things we do. And if you can do that when you're 16, I've said this before in conversations and joking, my intro to marketing happened when I was 14, when I was thinking of starting my own businesses and I was
Sure.
marketing before I knew the language,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep,
right?
absolutely.
Now imagine if you take students who, and I'm not unique in that, right? Imagine if you take students who are coming alive and this is what I may think about professionally, but then give them the tools and the validation. That's how you shape a better future. That's how we build a better space for marketing and the marketing profession.
So, one of the things that makes travel so interesting
Mhm.
is a lot of these spaces or places
Right.
don't change a lot, right? So I'm
Hmm.
here in Michigan. If you think about the capital of Lansing, right, the actual state capital, it doesn't change a lot, right? So as a marketer, you can kind of feel like you're stuck. And you were talking to my dear friend, and I'm sure he's a dear friend of yours as well because he's a dear friend to everybody. You were talking to my dear friend Marcus Collins a
Yeah.
couple months back, and you were using your analogy that I love, where marketing is one part art, one part science, one part magic. And it made me think of, there's a book, I think it came out in 2015. The magician's name is Nate Staniforth, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
memoir about how he loses his love of magic and then has to go out into the world and find real magic to come back to the professional world of
Mm-hmm.
magic and kind of explore that space. And I wonder, you are somebody who's relentlessly curious, unwaveringly optimistic, and we're both a couple years into our career
Yeah.
and we keep that kind of energy.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm wondering, like, if a travel marketer is feeling stuck, do you have any tips of how they regain that curiosity or get that sparkle in their eye to be like, here's a different way I can look at that thing, the pictured rocks National Lakeshore,
Right.
or the Grand Canyon, or whatever, right, in a different way, and market it to new travelers?
Right. For me, I think sometimes the best advice is to look away, right?
Oh, I love
So you
that.
can look back at it again, right? We get focused in and we know what the Grand Canyon, for example, means to us in this moment, right? But I think the power of the story is understanding the entry points that you have the story. What does the past, the present, and the future look like in that space, right? There was a time that you looked at your travel destination where we weren't jaded,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
You come in
Yes.
there and so it's finding that kind of moment where it's always new for someone, right? And
Yeah.
then
Oh,
thinking about,
the
yeah,
way I often say it, Benny, is like, it's always the reason that we tell the Christmas story and the Easter story the same is because it's always somebody's first time at church, right? That's how
it really is. And as a preacher's kid, I respect that that analogy because you're right, right? And so we find ways to come at it new. And if we use the Christmas conversation, think about things like the Christmas song, like how many different versions do we have? And everyone brings a little bit different to that version. I'm surprised at times when I hear though the versions of Mariah Carey's song, and I thought that we had all agreed that Mariah Carey would be the only one who could sing the song. But this
I
year I heard like four different versions, and
yes.
they were interesting, and I respect that. So I think in our space we have that. That's the magic part of marketing. So how do we create a space that becomes new? That's new. How do we create a space that can be nostalgic and old, right?
Yep.
There is some joy in binging things you've already watched.
Yes.
Like, there's
Yeah.
some joy in kind of coming back in, and from a sampling perspective, from a product, from using those 4Ps, using the marketing spaces in there. I think the problem solving and the magic of it is thinking about ways to remix what
Yes.
what
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you what you have. There's always kind of this space that comes in, whether it's creators creating experiences on top of it, whether it's story arcs that come in, whether it's ways that you bring data or information or artifacts that existed, but we didn't have the ways to bring them to life.
Right.
You
Right.
think
Yeah. Yeah.
about visiting like a natural history museum, right? Which has the same space as the travel space in there. The dinosaur bones are the dinosaur bones. But how do we find new stories and new imaginative ways to bring us back in? And I think with travel, as we said before, what's incredible is we now have a space in which there are all of these marketing moments that are wrapped around the actual physical experience, the
Yes.
journey architecture, right? The story of being in there, the meaning making that happens in it. So that's all the fancy language to talk about. Yeah, I want to show people having a great dynamic time, and you could too. Come and join me.
Yeah, and you're talking about that. I think last year, Epic Games, who owns Fortnite,
Hmm.
did this immersive display inside the game for Black History
Yes.
Month with Martin Luther King, right? And it reminds me of like here was a gaming company and a history museum that got together and went, how do we present this differently? And obviously, Fortnite's not for everybody, but it's
Right.
taking something that we know, a speech that everybody understands,
Yep.
and giving kind of a new spin to it.
This is where you find that imaginative spark,
Yeah.
right? How do I take that space in there? And it's really something that legacy brands face as well. How do I take my legacy offering? We think about a travel destination, it is the heart of a legacy brand,
Yes.
right? The Eiffel Tower is a legacy brand experience. But we're not short of imagination of how do we get people excited about the Eiffel Tower or in a more kind
I
of
want to
direct
pause.
way.
I
Yeah,
want to pause you because
yeah.
you're a really deep thinker about this stuff, and I want to pause here because I wonder, as you said that, I immediately thought there's something different
Hmm.
about going overseas, and like
Hmm.
what's in the magic of that trip that
Hmm.
you could take because if when you say the Eiffel Tower, people are going to hear this and be like, I've either been and I had this amazing time, or I've
Yeah.
always wanted to go,
Right,
right?
right,
And
right.
how do you bottle that energy and send it back to the Grand Canyon where there isn't that quite big of a journey and that much planning?
But I would push back and say I think it is, right? You think about when we'll use a classic travel marketer that's beyond travel marketing, but it focuses in a space in there. We'll use the kind of training that you get at Disney,
Sure.
where you come in and it's like, no matter what family is there, you have to understand that this is a trip of their lifetime, right? The barriers, the sacrifice, the investment, all of that human drama and capital that goes into running around with your screaming 6-year-old because they're afraid of Mickey and the costume,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
These are all the things. I speak as a dad, I'm sorry. But
Yeah, me as well. I've been there
these
as well. Yeah.
these are all those things that go into it. And the journey, whether I'm coming from Cleveland to Orlando or Cleveland to Paris, it's still this jump of imagination, this jump of aspiration. And I think that's that magic part you don't want to lose, right? When I grew up and we traveled with my family, when we went away over the summer, we never went outside of the US, right? Our trips were no less exciting and space in there and often involved a car and lots of hours and lots of smelly kids, right?
Yep.
That going into space in there. And these were the adventures. So it's kind of finding the way to pick your own adventure. The Parisian example and the other counterbalance I was going to give after Eiffel Tower, I was going to talk about the New York experience, right? Which is very different in a space in there. But if you don't live in New York, New York becomes this kind of space in there. What's interesting though is to see just how many people participate in travel in New York who are in New York, because there's a way from our conversations you can live in a space, and I say this as living in one of the top travel destinations in the world. I live in the shadow of Washington, D.C. I can't tell you how many times that my family and I take the opportunity to be travelers in our own city
Yes.
because I don't
And
actually get a chance to do any of those things that we're separated from. So the adventure is, I think, what you're getting to. And that adventure may be we think of it in our world as the big jump is flying across the Atlantic. But depending on where you are, the adventure may be going downtown. The adventure may be going to the country, right? Because that's,
Yeah, and I was more like framing it from the
yeah,
marketer, not the traveler, right? Because to your point,
yeah,
sometimes there are people that you meet that have never been to Washington D.C. that live right with
right,
like that's
right.
a foreign land to them because they've never been there, right? But it's right in their backyard. But I wonder from a marketer's perspective, I think it becomes super romantic to think about a
Right.
interplanetary trip to
Right.
Paris. And I think MySpace is like, oh, I've been working here for 15 years. And that's the magic that, like,
Yeah,
how do
yeah.
you
I
boil
think
that?
I think to that point, and and you're right. I start with the traveler because I'm a classic marketer strategist in there. I start with the customer, right? I
Sure.
start
Yeah,
with that
yeah. Yep.
experience. And because that's where I'm going to get the inspiration. Because you're absolutely right, right? The formations, the buildings and spaces don't change that much in a material space, right? Nobody's getting excited because we painted the guardrails a new color this year,
Right.
right? We're
Right. Yes.
we're not. But to that point of it's always a first time, the point of we can always fall in love again. I think having that language and that speaking of as that romance experience allows us to see that journey in there. And I demystify the kind of all journeys have to be big and grand into space, that this kind of reimagining is what's going to drive, your excitement about the marketing space scenario. Where am I finding this audience in there? Can I find the folks who, within 3 hours, a gallon of gas and X amount of space, what adventure can I find? Right. And that part of the front end doesn't sound sexy because I'm actually targeting my audience there and there, but
Right.
I'm creating the
Yes.
space for that to say this is that magical journey that comes into that. Right. And there is magic on that road trip, knowing that this gas station along the way has the best, like, corn dogs that you can find in the space in there. And that ties into what you're going into space in there. Um, because not all the trips are the once in a lifetime spaces for marketing, right? You think about it when we're marketing our consumer products. Not all of our consumer products are going to be buying the luxury car.
Sure.
Who
Yeah.
gets excited about that? Sometimes what we're doing is how do we make Reese's appealing, right? And we know what Reese's is, and we know it's perfectly good. And the combination of chocolate and peanut butter is familiar, and it's warm, and it's caring, and it's understood, and it's utterly boring in that sense. But yet, we've got friends whose job is to make it excitement for us.
Yes.
And we've turned the Reese's campaign into the Reese's becomes the mouthpiece.
Yep.
So it's all those things in there. And then it challenges our space in there and just says, yeah, you should just stick with us. And we get excited about that, right? I wonder, if I'm doing a more regional, a more proximity based, smaller transportation, are there some lessons I take from that everyday familiarity that brings people in, right? That doesn't I'll move a lot of Reese's products. I'll move far more Reese's than I will caviar
Yes. Yeah.
as a
Absolutely.
marketer.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and so I get excited about that. But as a marketer, I'm like, okay, this is my challenge here. Um,
So we've had a number of guests on this year, and in one way or another, each one of them says two similar things. I'm only going to focus on one
okay.
because I would love to get your take on this. Is this general sense that despite everything that's going on, we are living in a golden age of marketing? Your thoughts on that?
I think we're living in a dynamic age. I think, and that's what makes marketing fun, right? I think we're in a space where we have more access and we have more channels and we have more platforms and we have more agency and ability. And because we have all of those things, it's harder and more complex and more nuanced. And so it requires marketers to grow, extend, and be more creative in spaces, right? So yeah, if can I build a campaign and create an ad in less time than I ever could have imagined 20 years ago? Sorry to agree. Yes. Will that same ad have more competition to be seen and maybe less effective? Yes. Right. So you end up with this space in which we have platforms that never imagined. Think about the ability to create film content
Sure.
that we have, right? That wasn't a thing 30 years ago.
That wasn't
But
a thing 10 years ago,
exactly.
right?
But it also means that because we get a chance to be everything at one time, we are simultaneously business owners and strategists and marketers, we're also consumers and customers in space. So as much as we're creating content and ways to break through, we're also living in a clustered, you know, lots of noise environment in which, a core premise of marketing is to break through to connect. So I think in that space in there, do we have more access? Do we have more need? Do we have more spaces to do marketing? Yes. But at the same breath, is it harder? Does it require more? Does it require more distinction? Yes. It requires all that space in there. We're going to see, and we see now an acceleration of productivity and production fueled by, AI related tools that then open up more opportunities for creativity to stand out and break the door open. That by itself is a phenomenal space to be in your profession. It's also a very scary space.
Sure.
It puts new pressures on marketing leadership in your organization and what you do with your tools that we haven't seen. So like I said, I hesitate to the golden era in there, but I do embrace the fact that it is the best of times and it is the craziest of times, right? I,
Go get it.
I,
Go get it, Charles Dickens. Go get it.
as a marketing person, I'm a riff off of that, right? I give credit, but
and I also,
I'm not saying it's worse. It's just it's kind of crazy, and that's different.
I do want to say that you have said in a number of interviews that you have said AI in every podcast that you've been on.
I
in the
try
last
not
eight,
to.
No. I just wanted to point out I did not bring it up.
You did not.
Sir.
You did not.
You.
I did. I'm guilty on that one, but I wasn't going to.
I did everything in my power to not bring it up for you, and you went there.
But if we're talking about the time and the space,
yeah, no,
100%. I had to on that one. But yeah, we won't talk about it anymore. But yeah, that's like I said, I love this moment that marketing has a broader reach into the way we run and think about our businesses.
What is it that gets you excited about marketing every day in 2025? I'm sure it's different every month or different every season, but like, is there a through line that every day you get up and you're like, I can't wait to learn about X, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing and continue to do that work?
I love seeing the creative endeavor. I love knowing that it's a crowded marketplace. It's a crowded mind space. It's a crowded product space, but yet and still we break through. And so I'm excited to see the in spite of. I'm excited to see the new hamburger ads when we know the market is flooded with hamburgers, right? I love the fact that companies and brands are still cracking through. I love the fact that, in categories that we never expect, in things that make us laugh, that we see breakthroughs. I love the fact that since the dawn of consumer packaged goods, there's been deodorant. Right. But the
yes.
biggest seller for P&G and Colgate in the last 18 months is this notion of whole body deodorant. We've always had whole bodies. We've always had deodorant. But what happened that now we have this product space in there and it's all a marketing conversation. And the commercials are, breakthrough. The product is breakthrough. You're seeing the actual sales in that space in there. Am I advocating for whether or not you or my friend need whole body deodorant? I am not. Do I enjoy the marketing spectacle of, opportunity, demand, creativity? These are these kind of moments where we break through in there. So I use that just as a fun example. But I love seeing what our craft and profession can do to innovate, right? Because there are lots of things in the business marketplace that say that these things should not happen. They should not exist. This is a market that's saturated, full stop. This is a product that has no track record, full stop. These are ways in which we've always done it. So for me, watching companies break through all of that, that's the magic, my friend. That's the magic. Knowing that you got X number of customers, that's the science. Putting all these pieces together, that's the art. Knowing that these categories are going to break through and be your driver of new growth, that's where you get the magic.
My friend, it has been an absolute pleasure. I cannot wait to catch up with you again. If people want to reach out to you, LinkedIn the best place because I know you love it there.
LinkedIn's a good spot. I live there. They like me. It's a good spot to go there. Reach out anytime. We are one of the things that's important to me as a leader of AMA is that we are sincerely the essential professional community for marketing. And so you, as I said before, you can't be a community by yourself. You can't be a profession by yourself. We are built to be people first, innovation ideas first, support first. So those are the things. Reach out to me. Love to share new ideas, share best practices, put you in touch with great people like Eric here, staying out of trouble
I
and
don't know about all
helping
that.
helping to build a better, more dynamic marketing future. Let's inspire those who've been doing it a little while and are jaded, and let's inspire those who are just started who are going to change the world.
Benny, be well, my friend.